Hello, my name is Nick. I'm going to be walking through the features and the regular workflow for Codebuddy. I'm going to be using VS Code for this demonstration. Codebuddy also has a JetBrains plugin that's useful for IntelliJ, WebStorm, and all those JetBrains IDEs, including Android Studio as well. But the VS Code version is what we're using today, and you'll find that both versions are very similar. There's some minor differences, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so this is the Codebuddy panel. This is the main panel that you'll see here. The first thing to note is that by default, all open files is selected. So that means every file that is in open here in your view is going to be included in your prompt. And it is the recommended way to go. You just have to open a file in order to make sure that it will be included. Can be a problem if you have very large files, of course, but the amount of context that you have available in a prompt is shown here, this little dial here. The green shows you how much of the context is being used, which at the moment is not very much. And then the total size depends on which model you have chosen. You can choose which model you want to use at the top. My list is very long because I'm an admin, but for most people, this list wouldn't be nearly as long. There's a lot of test models that we have for different file copy operations and whatnot. But generally, I recommend using the Sonnet 3.5 for regular everyday use. And if things start to get rough and you're debugging an issue and you're having some trouble, that's when I would switch to 01 or 03. These models here are much better for debugging issues when things are not going your way. Codebuddy likes to use tooltips in order to show people like what each feature does. So as you mouse over everything, it'll give you some in-depth detail as to what the feature is and when to use it. One other thing to note is that the default is that text-to-speech is turned on. That's this option here. With this option, after writing something to Codebuddy, the response will either be read aloud to you or a summary of the response will be read aloud to you, depending on the workflow. You can easily turn this on and off if you need. There's still a little sound effect for when the response is complete, in case you're like all tabbed out and you're waiting for a response to come back. If you really want to mute everything, you can open up the advanced panel and then just say mute all. But we're going to be keeping that on for today. Let's see, the Codebase mode. Okay, so Codebuddy supports a vector database of your entire codebase. So that means when you start a new project or when you open a new project, Codebuddy will automatically scan your entire project. All of the contents of the code in the files in that project will be entered into a database. That database is stored here within your project under the .codebuddy folder. And then the database actually gets populated in the DB folder here. It's up to you if you want to include that in your repository, in your source control. So that's what the Codebase option is for. It taps into the embeddings of your entire codebase. And when you want to use the Codebase mode, you generally want to turn it on only if you are not sure which files to open. If you're not familiar with a project and you want to ask some questions about where an implementation is or how to implement something that you're not sure about, if you don't know how the authentication is implemented, or in this case, where is the plugin system and how does the plugin system work, for example, you could ask the question like that. With Codebase turned on, it will automatically think about your question, expand the query, and do it many times in parallel and come up with a list of files that should be included in the prompt in order to answer your question. And then it will select those files automatically for you and then attempt to answer your question based on the files that it selected. Our Codebase mode, unlike some other offerings, it doesn't give code responses based on the vector embeddings themselves. We always do entire files. We always include the entire file within the prompt. Even the Codebase mode, it will automatically include files for you. Entire files. So if your files are very large, that might be a problem, but for most people that is not the case. So yeah, the scan happens at the very beginning when you open a new project. You'll actually see that operation, especially in the VS Code version. You'll be able to watch the progress there, and there's a bit of an onboarding process that happens when you open a new project. Let's see. The new topic button, this just when there's stuff in the view here, you just want to have a nice clean slate. That's what that's for. Now, for regular operation, I find the best way to interact with Codebuddy is through the push to talk feature. So I've assigned F12 for the regular planning and coding push to talk. And then there's also control F12, which is basically it turns on the chat only mode. And what that basically means is it allows you to talk to the AI without expecting it to automatically format its response in the form of a plan and then trying to actually generate to change code. What I'd like to do today, though, is to implement a plugin system. So the idea is we're going to be expanding the Jarvis application to be more like an AI operating system. So it's feature creep. We're growing the project, but I'd like to experiment with seeing how far we can take it with allowing other people to submit plugins or apps basically in this sort of like a Jarvis ecosystem. Let's say create a weather app. And when you ask Jarvis, what's the weather right now? It would know that this app exists out there. And if you've never used it before, it would ask you, do you want to use this app? And then it would become part of your regular usage, like function calling, but I guess the next level of that. Anyway, so there's no such thing. None of this stuff exists. I don't actually even know how to implement something like this. This is going to be completely new to me. We're going to be leaning on the AI to help us out with what we need to do and how we need to do it. Well, yeah, we basically want some sort of plugin system, something that is going to run on the server. So the plugin would be triggered by the AI and it would run on the server, and then we'd have the ability to speak to the bot, but no way of triggering messages to any sort of plugin system or anything like that. It just completely doesn't exist, and I don't even know how we're going to implement it just yet. But yeah, we'll have to ask the AI for pretty much everything, and we might have to do a bit of research if it's not able to give us a sufficient answer. But my thinking is that the code for the plugin or the apps would run on the server side through some sort of sandboxed system. This is a Node.js project, so I'm sure there's some sort of library for doing something like that. We'll have to find out what Codebuddy comes up with. We're going to be using Sonnet 3.5 for the most part. My workflow is basically to use Sonnet 3.5 for pretty much everything. When it gets stuck, especially for debugging reasons, we will switch to using O3 or even O1, not mini, just the full one. It's more expensive to use, but sometimes that can get you unstuck, especially when it comes to more serious debugging issues. Yeah, I think we're ready to get started. I have keyboard shortcuts for push to talk, so I can talk to Codebuddy just by holding a key. I'll let you know when I'm about to do that. Basically, I hold one key for the regular flow where it's going to try to make a plan and then try to make code changes. There's another key for chat only, which is how I'm going to start because I don't actually want to make any code changes yet. I haven't selected any files yet. I just want to talk. So I'm going to use my push to talk key to talk to Codebuddy, and we'll see what we come up with. So I'm going to do that now. We're going to be in chat only mode, and we're going to ask like how we would implement a system like this. I need to implement a system that will allow people to create plugins for this project. We're going to want to execute these plugins in an environment that is somewhat sandboxed, but we do want it to execute on the server. I'm not sure what would be the most appropriate library to do that. It would have to be lightweight and fast, but somewhat sandboxable at least. We don't really want plugins to be able to access the rest of the system of the application. We're going to want to talk to it through APIs, through hooks, and that sort of thing. So what would be a library that would be the most appropriate for something like that?
For implementing a plugin system in Java with sandboxing capabilities, I have a few recommendations. 1. GraalVM JavaScript engine recommended. Modern, fast, and maintained by Oracle. Good sandboxing capabilities. Can limit access to Java classes and methods. Supports JavaScript, which is familiar to many.
I think since we didn't include any of our files in any of our file structure or anything like that, it seems to be giving me Java-related answers rather than JavaScript and Node.js answers. So I'm just going to ask it to do something more for Node.js. And I've been pressing the push to talk, so it's heard me, and I'm hoping it'll give me something better.
You're absolutely right. I apologize for assuming Java when you hadn't specified the technology stack. You're looking for Node.js solutions for plugin systems. For Node.js, here are more appropriate recommendations. 1. VM2, popular sandbox library for Node.js, provides strong isolation. Runs untrusted code in a separate V8 context. Good performance. Active maintenance 2. Isolated VM. Even stronger isolation than VM2. Runs code in a separate V8 isolate.
Okay, looking here, I think VM2 is probably, it looks like it's the most appropriate. I've never used it before, but I think that it might be a good idea to start there. So let's see about updating we're going to have to pull this new library in our package.json file. So next, we're going to want to proceed with VM2. I actually have it now installed in the package.json file. Let's see, VM2. This is what we're using. We're going to want to describe exactly what we're going to want for an implementation. So generally, it's best to work in a layered architecture when it comes to working with AI. You want to try to make sure that your services have a very limited scope as far as what they're expected to do. And it needs to be unit testable, because if you create a service that's highly unit testable, your AI is going to be able to do pretty much everything. You won't have to touch it for the most part, and it'll even test it itself. So we're going to want to do that next. We want the basics. We want to be able to have a basic plugin code, some sort of hook system to be able to specify a manifest or something to say the components of the plugin. We're going to want a server-side service to be able to execute that plugin code and get back some sort of, like when it executes a hook, let's say a startup hook. And yeah, there's going to be other things too, but that's a good starting point. So I think we should start with that. We want to make sure that it's not going to be executed as part of the regular Node.js environment. We also are going to want it to be like fully separately threaded. So like workers or threads or something are going to have to be integrated as well. I feel like we should probably do that maybe as a separate layer in the hierarchy. So you just have the basic runner service or whatever for actually running the VM, for like passing in parameters and I don't know, something to that effect. And then maybe a service on top of that would actually execute that within its own worker thread or something. I don't know. We'll talk to the AI about all that stuff, but let's see what it can come up with. I guess one other thing is it might be good to actually include some files, even just as a reference so it knows like the way that I like to do things. So there might be some services I could use as a reference. It's not related to the project exactly, but it'll just give the AI an idea of the sorts of ways that I like to implement things, and it'll generally tend to copy that. So that's, I think, what we should go for. I'm going to open up the advanced options here, and I want to include the file tree. This just lets the AI understand what our directory and folder structure looks like, because it's going to be creating some new files. It's not going to have a whole lot of reference material to go from, and it might need to understand our basic folder structure to make some smart decisions about where things should be going. So it's going to basically see what all of this stuff with that file tree enabled, and that's going to help to be more informative. Sometimes the file tree, you don't want to use it, or you literally can't use it just because your file tree is enormous. This is why it's optional and why it's not always on by default. It can fill up your context memory dial, which you can see here. Will let you know how much of the maximum context memory is being used and what it's being used for. You can see each file is used as a fair bit. This one seems to be the largest file, the Jarvis service. Yeah. All right, so let's talk to the AI. Let's see if we can get it to create the basics of a plugin system. In this case, I'm not using the chat-only push-to-talk. I'm going to use the regular workflow, so it's going to create a plan. Normally, when Codebuddy gives you code files, the conversation is ended. It doesn't remember anything that was said before, and this is by design. This gives you better code quality outputs, and I have some blogs that go over why that might be the case, but anyway, just letting everyone know why this is the way that it is. Okay, so let's see what we can do. I'm going to talk to the AI now. I'm going to be using the push to talk button. I want to create the plugin system using VM2. I think that might be the best because I want it to be sandboxed and I want some good performance, and also it's also good to have a library that is very well used and well understood. It looks like it might be a popular option. I basically want to create a plugin system. There's probably going to need to be like a plugins folder, and then each plugin that's available to the system would be added to that folder, maybe in its own folder. I'm thinking plugins should have some sort of ability to specify hooks, maybe a startup hook, for example, when the plugin is being initiated. And we're going to want to have a service that will be able to run this plugin. I think we should create like a sample plugin just to get the whole system started. And we're going to want to create this new service that runs a plugin through VM2. And we're going to want to create an associated test as well so that we can make sure that the test plugin actually works. The test plugin can be anything. We'll just want to initialize it by initiating the init hook and letting the plugin respond with some sort of JSON, and then we can verify that actually worked in the unit test. Yeah, I think that's everything. Let's see what it's got. So it's just processing. You can see that it's processing the voice
I'll
input.
need a moment.
So this is a different workflow, whereas before it read out everything that it ended up writing here. In this case, it's going to write the plan. It's not going to read it all out for you.
Please excuse
and
my
then
interruption,
at the end,
sir.
it
I
gives
have
you a
something
summary
for
of
you.
what it says.
Sounds like a solid plan for your plugin system using VM2. You'll create a structured plugin directory, support hooks for initialization, and ensure good performance with sandboxing. If you want, I can help you dive into any specific part, like setting up the plugin structure or creating the test plugin.
Okay, so you have the option of going through and having a look at the plan. But after a while, you start to understand what the system is capable of, and you can guess where it might go and what it can and can't do, what's too much for it to handle at once. Once you're pretty confident, you can start using the Claude 3 Sonnet no confirm. And what that does is it automatically accepts the plan, essentially, skips the initial summary, and just gives you a summary at the end once it's actually given you some code. That helps because you can just tell it to do something, walk away, or do something else, and then when it comes back, it's got some code for you, and you can review the code instead of reviewing the plan and augmenting the plan and whatnot. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and confirm
Yes, sir,
this.
I'm on it.
It's going to create the first iteration of the plan. It should create the test, and let's just see what it does. If we don't like it, I would go back, maybe have it regenerate the plan and do it over again while changing my initial prompt. Rather than following up with conversation after it's given me code, it's better to go in and change the initial prompt and have it be a little more specific about things you want it to do or not to do.
Excuse my interruption, sir.
Okay, let's see.
I've implemented your plugin system using VM2. Here's what we've set up. This service loads and manages plugins in a sandboxed environment, handling their initialization hooks. 2. Hello World plugin, a simple test plugin with a plugin.json manifest and an index.js file that defines an init hook. 3. Plugin service.test.tease, unit tests to ensure the plugin system functions as expected, including loading plugins and handling errors. Would you like to add more features, like additional hooks or error handling, or perhaps explore how to create more complex plugins? Let me know what you want to tackle next.
Okay, so interesting. It looks like it's created a plugin manifest, which makes complete sense. There's a version, description, main, I guess is like the main hook or something like that. Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see how that works. Let's look at this. So this looks like it's in, so it's created a folder under server plugins, and then under there's Hello World, and then there's the plugin JSON, which looks like that would be like for how do you define the manifest information. And then we've got the basic plugin, which has the init, and it returns some JSON. Very cool. And then we have a test. And let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. So I'm going to accept all of this. We'll see if it all compiles. Oh, it's all green. Interesting. There we go. Okay. Virtual machine from VM2. Okay, let's just see what happens now. I'm going to run this. Looks like the plugin itself is actually JavaScript, which is great. I didn't actually mention that the plugins should be JavaScript, but it seemed to know. I'm pretty sure TypeScript wouldn't have worked in VM2, so it's good that it knew that it should make that into JavaScript rather than TypeScript. Okay, we've got an error here. virtual machine. It looks like the export that it's expecting is not here. Oh, here we go. Interesting. I wonder, I don't know if this is going to work, but I wonder if it's actually supposed to be VM instead of VM2. So let's just try it and see. Oh, that's happy. Okay. Wow. What are the odds? VM is a simple. Interesting. For running untrusted code, that's what we need. So yeah, this looks like it's doing well so far. I'd like to run this test. I think my test plugin runners are not exactly set up properly, so I think if I press this, it's not gonna work. This is a bit of a user issue. Well, I'm gonna try it to see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't like it. I wonder if I can. This is plugin service. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's try this maybe. I'm just gonna run it one more time. I just want to walk through it real quick. I want to verify everything because the AI just wrote quite a bit of code. You want to read through this and make sure you understand it, and make sure you know that it's doing what's expected of it. So it's defined. We want to run plugin init. Interesting. Okay, and that's true, I assume. It didn't throw. It's not failing. I don't exactly understand why I can't inspect a result directly, but it seems to work. Let me just verify one more time. That autocomplete, by the way, that's GitHub Copilot. I use Codebuddy and Copilot together because Codebuddy doesn't have autocomplete, at least not yet. I'm gonna go right to there, and I want to see that the output actually works. Anyway, yeah, so it just works. For whatever reason, I can't debug and inspect the result, but that does in fact work. Okay, so the question is the way that it's designed, is that appropriate? So it's able to run plugin init directly by just writing it in here. Maybe we can talk to the AI a little bit about this. Yeah, I'm going to just use chat only mode and just talk to Codebuddy. I'm going to clear what's here just to give us a nice fresh start. I don't need file tree anymore, for the moment anyway. I just want to talk about this, the way it's implemented. Maybe it's got like a better idea, or maybe it's totally fine, I'm not sure. The way plugins are run right now, plugin.init is called by passing a string to plugin.init, but I'm just not sure, is that the best way to go about it? Or I don't know, it just feels a little wonky to me. Do you have any other thoughts about the implementation and how it's done, and if there's anything better and what the pros and cons might be?
Let me analyze the current implementation and suggest some alternatives. Current implementation. You can see the code box in our conversation history. Key issues with the current approach. 1. String evaluation is less type safe. 2. No direct access to plugin methods properties. 3. Less IDE support, no autocomplete type hints. 4. Harder to pass parameters. 5. More prone to errors. Here's a potential improved implementation. Benefits of this approach. 1. Type safety through TypeScript interfaces. 2. Better IDE support with autocomplete. Direct method calls instead of string evaluation. 4. Easier to maintain and extend. 5. Better error handling. 6. More explicit plugin API contract. The main trade-offs. 1. More boilerplate code initially. 2. Requires plugins to be written in TypeScript. JavaScript might be a limitation if you want to support other languages. 3. Slightly more complex implementation. You can see the code box in our conversation history. This would give you more control over plugin lifecycle management and allow for better resource cleanup and event handling. The manifest file would also need to be updated to reflect these new capabilities. Would you like me to provide more details about any of these aspects?
Interesting. Okay. But on the other hand, this does tie us to TypeScript, which would probably be a great big pain in the ass. So we probably don't want to do that. It makes me wonder, should we explore this further? Or is it good enough to just call these methods directly? Okay. One thing that we should consider is the fact that we want to allow for arbitrary like function calling, where the AI would be able to say, to want to fire off some sort of function of the plugin if the user is like requesting it. So like the user would maybe say something like they want to check the weather, and then the plugin would verify that the user really asked for checking the weather, and if so, then it would fire off the command to check weather, and then the result would be given back to the chatbot so that it can read what the result was of that call. It's like in ChatGPT when you ask it to search the web and then it goes dit, 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 and then it starts to do things and it searches the web for you before it actually responds. So we want to be able to do something like that, like a plugin can arbitrarily be asked to do different things. But plugins don't only do a single thing, like they could do like a number of different things. So we need to be able to arbitrarily specify the different functions of the plugin. To be honest, I should have been saying all this to Codebuddy because I'm just going to have to say it all over again. But this is what the workflow really tends to be. Like you're working it out, you ask questions, and Codebuddy helps with putting it together. You use your voice because you're more verbose. Like just talking the way I'm talking, I tend to be more verbose in the fact that I say the same thing multiple times. Even if you end up contradicting yourself, just say it all, and then the contradiction, it's following along when you contradict yourself. It's like helping to conclude in the same way that you did when you were working it out verbally. And I find that all of that just gives a better code quality. It's very natural to interact with AI code generator this way. Okay, so that concludes our demonstration of Codebuddy. We were demonstrating the regular sort of workflow that is involved when using Codebuddy to generate code in an existing fairly large code base. It wasn't an exhaustive demonstration. I believe we didn't get into like auto-selecting files or anything, but it does indicate what it's like to actually use Codebuddy to do some real-world work where we're not clear as to how to actually implement a new feature. We use the AI to help guide us there. We use the AI to actually write the code and then to help fix the code and just to iterate basically. And it's more of a demonstration of how to use Codebuddy in an iterative way, in a suggested iterative way. I'm going to be creating more videos like this. If anyone's interested in this format, let me know, maybe on Discord. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you.